We got Sony PlayStation's response to the CMA reversing course, and it's not pretty. There's a lot here to talk about, so let's get into it. Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Randall419, the man with the million. Hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. We're gonna get right into the video, talking again about everybody's favorite subject in the world, the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. The regulators are looking at it. We're expected to get a decision from the CMA later this month on April 26th and the European Commission on May 22nd. But something interesting happened along the way. A couple weeks ago, I didn't make a video about this, but we did talk about it on the podcast. The CMA shocked everybody by reversing course and saying that they no longer felt that the acquisition was going to lessen competition in the gaming space in the European Kingdom. Of course, Microsoft was very happy about that switch, and ever since then, a lot of pundits online have said, oh, well, the deal's as good as done. We never got to hear what Sony had to say about this surprising turn of events. In fact, MLEX had reached out to them, but they provided no comment. Well, today we got Sony's published report to the CMA for that surprising U-turn, and wow, they are not happy at all. They're calling the CMA irrational, and Jim Ryan once again makes an appearance, basically saying that Sony's first-party games, they don't really stack up to Call of Duty, and without Call of Duty, they would essentially be out of business. There's a lot of juicy stuff here. It's a story that keeps on giving, but it's also a story that everybody wants to be over. But Jim Ryan, PlayStation poor arguments, you know I gotta talk about it. So I want to do a little setup to refresh everybody's memory. The next thing I'm gonna read here is from exactly 1 month ago when Sony was behind the CMA and all their findings 100%. It's basically going to be a how it started versus how it's going. So a month ago, this document said Microsoft would have the ability to foreclose by withholding Call of Duty. The PFs conclude that Microsoft, quote, would have the ability to foreclose PlayStation, including its distribution storefront and subscription services, because Call of Duty is, quote, an important component of PlayStation's range of game offerings, contributes a significant share of PlayStation's revenue and gameplay, and is important to driving console sales. Sony welcomes the CMA's comprehensive review of the evidence in reaching this conclusion. It agrees with the CMA's findings. And even if you go all the way back to last year, on October 28th, 2022, this document said that the decision is based on compelling and extensive evidence, including Microsoft's, Sony's, and Activision's internal documents, independent surveys, engagement, spend, and share data, multiple third-party views, Microsoft's own public statements, and a thorough analysis of Microsoft's past conduct. Sony agrees with the decision's findings. It believes strongly that the transaction will harm competition, industry participants, innovation, and consumers. Sony's been 100% behind the CMA during Phase 1, which was kind of a broad overview, before it went to Phase 2, which would be very in-depth. And Sony was out there publicly saying, you got it right, CMA, you have the correct information, this deal needs to be blocked, or Microsoft needs to sell off Activision Blizzard, what have you, right? Jimmy came out and said, we need to save gaming, because if you allow this acquisition, it's going to destroy the video game industry, it's going to harm consumers and developers. It's kind of hard to make those claims, though, when the only people against the deal in the video game industry are Sony themselves, and everybody else seems to be for it, and consumers are going to get a better deal because those games are going to be on Game Pass for cheaper, and more people will be able to play them on Nintendo consoles as well through many different cloud avenues. But at the time back then, everybody believed Microsoft was going to have a rough time. They thought the CMA was going to block it, and it looked like that up until recently when the CMA changed course. And now we're going to get into how it's currently going. And I have to give a huge shout out to Foss Patents on Twitter. I saw this, had to include it in my video, but this document is dated March 31st, 2023. We know Sony was 100% behind the CMA. They agreed with every decision, but suddenly Now Sony's saying that the CMA's reversal of its position on its console theories of harm is surprising, unprecedented, and irrational. Now, some people would think, man, that's a strong word to use, irrational. You shouldn't really be taking shots at the CMA there. But Foss Patton says it's an applicable standard of appellate review that maybe Sony's using this language. So once the deal maybe closes, they would file an appeal with a tribunal, although I don't know really sure how that works, but maybe that's something to keep in mind. So a month ago, we basically have Sony agreeing with everything the CMA is saying that the deal needs to be blocked to protect consumers and developers in the industry, and that they're so thoughtful, so great, so wise. And then a month later, they're saying that this is surprising, it's unprecedented and irrational, and you need to go back and look at the figures and the numbers because we're not going to stand for this. And what does our buddy Jim Ryan have to say about this? Oh, man, it gets really juicy. Now, the last time I made a video about this whole ABK stuff was because PlayStation had put out the ridiculous notion that Xbox was going to hide bugs and glitches in the final level of Call of Duty, essentially degrading the experience for PlayStation users, even though that's exactly what PlayStation does by signing those exclusivity contracts with Activision to have exclusive characters or faster XP or exclusive levels for X amount of time. It essentially degrades the Xbox version. But PlayStation doesn't want that. And I don't know, PlayStation shouldn't be talking about degrading games considering they just released The Last of Us PC port, which seems to be one of the worst ports in PC history. Everybody is clowning Naughty Dog and that game for the ridiculous images and glitches that everybody's seeing. So why is Sony so suddenly worried about degradation and things like that? Perhaps they are concerned that Microsoft might have incentive to do to PlayStation what PlayStation has been doing to Xbox with their marketing contracts and deals for over a generation now. I don't know if it could be, but this is what the document says. Any degradation in the price, performance, or quality of play on PlayStation, or any delays on release would quickly harm SIE's reputation and cause a loss of engagement and of players. As Sony's CEO Jim Ryan explained to the CMA at the remedies hearing, if PlayStation received a degraded version of Call of Duty, it would, quote, seriously damage our reputation. Our gamers would desert our platforms in droves, and network effects would exacerbate the problem. Our business would never recover. Well, let's ignore the fact that Xbox is offering a contract similar to the one they offered Nintendo and Nvidia about release parity, technical parity of Call of Duty for the next 10 years that Sony won't sign. Of course, why would they sign it? They have every incentive to fight this deal, as I've said consistently in every single video. I have no problem with Sony fighting this deal. It's in their best interest. However, I will make fun of Jim Ryan and the things he says. I will make fun of PlayStation's arguments that they present to regulators because they're utterly ridiculous. So here you have Microsoft saying, hey, you can have all this, just sign on the dotted line. And PlayStation won't, but they're still complaining to regulators that, what if Microsoft does X, Y, and Z? We won't be able to compete. It's like, bro, the deal's right there, sign it, lock it in, it'll be enforceable as a legal contract. But anyways, we have Flying Crying Jim, Dance Move, Saving Private Ryan himself, coming out of the woodwork. I haven't seen a quote from him in a long time, saying that a degraded version of Call of Duty in any instance would seriously damage their reputation and that players would just leave their platform in droves and their business would never ever recover. But it's funny because when you talk to PlayStation fans on social media, every single one of them says that Sony's reputation is based around the incredible first-party games that their studios make, like God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7, game after game, banger after banger. That's what those people argue. That's Sony's reputation is based on. But Jim Ryan's not having any of that. In fact, when someone brings up Insomniac, he's like, I don't know her. It's all based around Call of Duty and how important. If he's essentially throwing his first-party studios under the bus, he's also essentially throwing his third-party studios under the bus because he's saying if we still even had Call of Duty, but it wasn't as good as Xbox's, people would leave the platform en masse and that their business would basically be destroyed. I mean, how ridiculous is that premise? The whole idea of PlayStation's empire dating back to the PS1 is based on Call of Duty? Nobody's really going to buy that. The CMA were probably thinking along those lines of phase 1 when they had that theory of harm that it could lessen competition because Call of Duty is so big, but they did the investigative work and they determined that, you know what, it's not going to be a problem because Xbox has no incentive to withhold it from PlayStation because they would lose so much money, and they don't want to harm the reputation of Call of Duty or themselves by degrading another version that millions upon millions of people are going to play. So it doesn't make any sense for them to do it, and even if they did do it, it wouldn't matter because not many people are going to switch platforms anyway. You know, some of this could basically be a performative act by Jim Ryan and the legal teams to basically say all this stuff so they can go to shareholders later on and say, you know what, we did our best, we tried to block the deal, we said all the things we needed to say even if some of it is utterly absurd and ridiculous. We did what we had to do to protect our business and it didn't just work out. But nobody in their right mind is going to believe that Sony's business would be completely destroyed by a single game that is going to remain on PlayStation and most likely going to be the exact same version. Not many people are going to make the switch because a lot of people have a lot of money invested into PlayStation in the first place. Not saying that people won't switch, some will, but it won't be this colossal wave where PlayStation basically says, oh my god, I don't even know how we're gonna operate anymore. PlayStation's just threatened by the idea of Xbox sticking around, becoming more powerful, getting more leverage, growing Xbox Game Pass and subscriptions, making that more of a standard way of how people interact with video games, and Sony doesn't really want to offer their own games on a subscription service, so they're against that. And also, let's be honest, PlayStation makes a ton of money off of Call of Duty, and even in some of their reports, they basically fund their first party through how much money, the 30% cut they get from those sales. And with Microsoft owning Call of Duty, and essentially when this deal goes through, PlayStation and PlayStation users, by buying Call of Duty on that platform, will essentially be bankrolling Xbox and their first-party divisions for years and years to come, and that probably doesn't sit very well with the team over at PlayStation. And if you do read the whole document, it's funny, they bring up Harvey Smith's quote about Redfall, about how it was supposed to come to PlayStation and it wasn't, even though the CMA doesn't care that Redfall is an exclusive, and they've already said that the Bethesda acquisition is different and they don't really care, but Sony's gonna nail that point home. They mention how you can't really compare Call of Duty to Minecraft and how Minecraft's not even on Chrome OS, which it now is in early access. In fact, they said that you should really compare Call of Duty to Redfall, not Minecraft, which is absurd because Redfall's not going to have the number of users or make as much money as the juggernaut that is Minecraft, but that's what Sony's saying. They even mentioned Digital Foundry and the reviews and the tech stuff they do and how important they are. They even talk about forum posts. Jim Ryan and his legal team are scouring forum posts on NeoGAF and Reset Era and Giant Bomb to come to things that basically support what they're saying. It's all so funny, and it's all based around this idea that the CMA took a deeper look into everything, decided that their initial findings were wrong, reversed course, and said, this isn't going to lessen competition, and the only thing we're concerned about is cloud gaming. So a month ago, you had Sony 100% behind the CMA saying that they're so smart, they're amazing, we need this deal blocked to save the industry, and then a month later they're like, oh my god, this is unprecedented and irrational, there's so many errors in this thing, go back and look at it. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I just want this whole ABK drama to end, and I'm sure you guys want that as well. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the Patreon for the Xbox 2 podcast in the description below. I love you guys. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.